My name is Tucker Dorsey. I'm the chair of the Baldwin County Commission. We have 4 commissioners here in Baldwin County, Chris Elliott, Skip Gruber, and Frank Burt. In the room that I'm sitting in, I have the sheriff. I've got some of our staff directors. I've got Daniel Catlin from Congressman Burns' office. I have our EMA director. I have the city administrator from Orange Beach. I have the mayor from Silver Hill. I have several from the press. This call is being piped into our auditorium, which can be heard from the public is aware of this issue. And I cannot tell you how packed that auditorium is. I just poked my head in there. There might be 250 people in there. And just to let you know, we are gravely concerned about the situation, and we are anxious to learn from y'all where you are, what the process is, what this means, etc. So thank y'all for the time to help inform the Baldwin County region as to what is going on.
Yeah. Well, Commissioner, this is Commissioner Dorsey. We appreciate your time and the time of the commissioners and other folks there in the room, and certainly the folks in the auditorium. And we're want to get to your questions. But if you don't mind, let me just ask: is there anyone else on the call? I heard some other beats who maybe did not get a chance to introduce themselves.
That was Reggie Chitwood, who is our EMA director.
Okay. Great. All right. And again, I will ask folks here and with me in Washington to introduce themselves. Again, my name is Jim Mason. I'm in the Office of Intergovernmental and External Affairs in Secretary Burwell's office here at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Andrea Helling, Chief of Staff in the Office of Refugee Resettlement, the Administration for Children and Families, at the Department of Health and Human Services. Hi, Emily Mella. I'm a Deputy Liaison Officer in the Office of Refugee Resettlement, also here at the Department of Health and Human Services.
And our Regional Director in Atlanta, Pamela Rochelle, extends her greetings. Unfortunately, she had another commitment this morning and was not able to join us, but we will certainly follow up with her after the call, and she will continue to be your primary liaison. And she's worked very closely with our office. Again, we certainly appreciate the time, and what we thought we'd do, commissioners, is maybe spend a couple of minutes just kind of giving an overview of the program, what our plans are, and then use most of the time to really answer your questions. But as folks may know, this program, our Administration for Children and Families and the Office of Refugee Resettlement here at HHS provides care and placement for children who come into the United States from other countries without an adult guardian. And these children, which we call, the statute refers to them as unaccompanied alien children, or we call them unaccompanied children, are for the primary responsibility, again, of our Office of Refugee Resettlement.
Excuse me.
For the first 9 years of the program, ORR had an average of about 7,000 to 8,000 children who were served annually. And those numbers have been going up from fiscal year 2012. The number went up to about a little over 13,600 children, and since then, in the program received in FY 2013 about 24,600 children, and in fiscal year 2013 the numbers went up to almost 57,500. And last fiscal year, we had about 37,726 referrals. So we, have most of our children. And again, I'll let our Office of Refugee Resettlement talk about details. But we have standard shelters across the country. We have about 8,700 beds now where we care for these children. But there are times when it looks like the numbers are going up. In an abundance of caution, we try to identify facilities that we can use as temporary shelters to be able to handle numbers that maybe exceed the capacity in our standard shelters. And that's why we have been going around the country doing these assessments of potential sites to determine whether they might be feasible to use as temporary shelters. Again, let me emphasize temporary. This is not coming in for a long period of time. It's really just to get us through what is typically, historically, an increase in the number of children, usually in the summer months. Sometimes that's like last year that extended into the fall. So with that, let me turn this over to Andrea Helling to kind of, again, describe a little more about the program and what we have been doing in the in your community.
Andrea, can I put you on hold for 1 second before we get started? We have a commons problem with our auditorium, and there are 250 people that are getting kind of hot in there. Mike, what's the issue? Do we know?
The call dropped. We're replacing a new call. Hopefully it'll just be a couple minutes.
If y'all could just stand by for us.
Oh, sure. Happy to do that.
Thank you very much.
And if you need us to start over, we're happy to do that.
That's very kind of you. We may very well request that you do just that.
Okay.
Wanda, are you hearing us? Yep, sounds good. Oh my goodness gracious.
Alright. We gotta restore the temperature.
You're good?
You want them to start over?
Yes, please. So, fire them up. All right, so I'm sorry to ask you to do this again. We have columns back in the auditorium. You gave us kind of a little definition of the unaccompanied and the populations that you're seeing. Do you mind going through that again for us, and so we can get the folks that are in the auditorium up to speed?
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
Happy to do that. And again, just to introduce myself, I'm Jim Mason in the Office of Intergovernmental and External Affairs in Secretary Burwell's office at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. And we certainly appreciate this time to be able to talk with the communities there and about our Unaccompanied Children program and to answer your questions. And let me just start again by give a brief overview of the program, and I'll turn it over to Andrea Helling, who is the Chief of Staff for our Office of Refugee Resettlement. Our Administration for Children and Families, which is a part of HHS, provides care and placement for children who come into the United States from other countries without an adult guardian. These children are referred to under the statutes as unaccompanied alien children, and we refer to them as unaccompanied children. This program is administered by our Office of Refugee Resettlement in the Administration for Children and Families, and the program has been ongoing for several years now. For the first 9 years at the Office of Refugee Resettlement, they received an average of 7,000 to 8,000 children a year in the program. But since fiscal year 2012, the numbers have gone up. In fiscal year 2012, ORR served about 13,600 children, and in fiscal year 2013, the number was 24,668, and then in fiscal year 2013, we received about almost 57,500 children. And then in last fiscal year 2015, the numbers were about 33,726. These children come primarily from Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. In 2015, approximately 3/4 of the children that were referred to us were over 14 years of age, and 2/3 of those were boys. In fiscal year 2015, the number of youth, the percentage of youth served in the program, primarily again from Honduras, about 17%, Guatemala 45%, and El Salvador 29%. We have about 8,700 beds in what we call standard shelters across the country. These are our beds that we have grantees, and they're open year-round, and that's where we serve primarily for the majority of these children. But there are times in the years when the numbers of kids coming to the border may exceed the our capacity to serve them in standard shelters. So we try to plan ahead. And in an abundance of caution, we go to sites that might be used as a temporary shelter for unaccompanied children. And again, let me emphasize this be a temporary shelter, only to help us through a potential surge. And we've looked at sites around the country. You're aware from our website that we've had places. In fact, earlier this year, we were using Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico. Last fall, we were using some summer camps in Texas. But we continue to look for places that might be suitable, again, for temporary shelters. And that's one of the reasons we came to the Silver Hill and Orange Beach communities with the outlying air bases, of course, which is a part of the Naval Air Station Whiting Field in Milton, Florida. So let me turn this over now to Andrea and give you a little more detail about the program, and then we want to get to your questions as quickly as we can.
Thank you.
Andrea?
Thank you very much, Jim, and appreciate the ability to do this call. And a lot of what we have to share today, we spoke with Commissioner Gruber last week, so some of this will be a repeat for you, Commissioner, but one of the things as we have seen this program grow over the last few years, 2 years ago, we had a significant influx of children, and the Office of Refugee Resettlement did not have enough beds ready to take all the children directly after Border Patrol processed them at Border Patrol stations. And the result of that was that the children ended up staying in the Border Patrol stations significantly longer than they should, which impacted CBP's ability to do their mission on the southern border. So after learning from that experience, we've spent the last few years figuring out how we can build a more nimble system so that we can quickly expand our bed capacity so that children can come directly to our care. So over the course of 2015, we didn't have as many referrals as we had in 14. But then in the fall, we saw the numbers start going back up. And at that point, we mobilized a multi-step effort to identify more space for bed capacity. And working with our federal partners, including the Defense Department, the Department of Labor, USDA, the Department of Veterans Affairs, and the General Services Administration, we've assessed various federal properties in 12 states across the country. And this is property and facilities that are currently owned by the federal government. Most of these are buildings that aren't currently being used, or property that isn't being actively used by that component of government. And as Jim said, we've had a couple of shelters, facilities we turned into temporary shelters to expand our capacity, utilizing Holloman Air Force Base in Alamogordo, New Mexico, as the corner piece of the Air Force Base. That a couple buildings that weren't currently being used, so that we've turned that into a temporary structure, a temporary shelter with 655 beds available. We're not currently utilizing it because we don't need it right now. But as of this week, we are utilizing a second temporary shelter facility that we opened up at a Job Corps site in Homestead, Florida, south of Miami. And that has initial capacity for 800 beds. And as we continue to look for additional space, should all of our other permanent beds in our 100+ net shelters and our temporary shelters, if for some reason we end up getting so many children that we need to turn something on quickly, we've now turned to looking for property to place semi-permanent facilities. And that would be a quicker startup time, as we've assessed a variety of properties around the country, including the sites in Baldwin County. And then we would set up a temporary operation to provide extra capacity on a short-term basis to make sure that the children can come directly to ORR care, so we meet our legal responsibility to care for them. And part of our operation, regardless of where we go, is we provide on-site medical care, mental health care, education components, obviously the food and bedding, recreational opportunities, access to religious services, and then full security for the children on the premise as well as whatever community we're in. That security that provides perimeter security, but then we also, given the nature of this program, we also have a fairly high adult-to-child ratio. So during the day, for every group of 8 children, we have 1 adult youth care worker who spends the day with them. And then in the evenings, it's 1 adult youth care worker who is awake for every pod of kids as well. And that doesn't include the maintenance staff, the case managers, clinicians. So and we have a lot of eyes on to provide security for the operations we run. And then I know one of the additional questions, two additional questions that we've seen. One is what potential impact do our shelters have on the school district? And because our shelters provide everything that the children need, they don't leave our shelter premises while they're in our care. So we do all the educational components on the shelter, so the children don't interact in the community. And then the second component is every shelter we run has, before it's open, we have a rigorous evacuation protocol that we follow, that we establish prior to children arriving to make sure that we have plans in place should they be needed. So the last thing I'll say before we open it up, we turn back to the commissioners, is how we identified Baldwin County as an area to assess, and some of the things we took a look at when our team of engineers was out there last week. The Defense Department has been wonderful partners to us, and they have provided numerous sites for our review of facilities and buildings that they are not currently using, because our commitment to the Defense Department is that this mission doesn't impact national security. And so the Defense Department identified these naval outlying fields as two fields that they were not currently utilizing and that we could take a look at, just as they have in a variety of other places around the country. So we have a team of folks who are from the Office of Refugee Resettlement, as well as the General Services Administration, folks who go out to take a look, and engineers and other folks like that, who go out to look at the land to see if it's flat, is it paved, what's the road access, what types of services would we need to bring in, would we need to bring in water, would we need to bring in generators. So there's a standard list of, what type of evacuation protocols do we need to think about as we assess the site to determine if this could be our needs. So those are the types of things that the site assessment team took a look at when they were out on the property last week. So with that, I will turn it back over to Commissioner Dorsey, and we're happy to take questions.
Thank you. Again, I'll reference, we've got over 200 people in the auditorium that are, we've given them some cards to ask questions. And a lot of the questions are, we have a lot of consistency. You've addressed the schooling and the healthcare issue. Our schools are beyond capacity right now here in Baldwin County. It's a tremendous growth area. I assume y'all have done some homework on where we are, what our community looks like, and the demographics of the area. The hands down number one question that has been asked, not only by myself but of everyone here, is concerning security. I mean, if they were nervy enough to hop out of their country, what are y'all doing to contain them so that we don't have them in our population? Infrastructure needs, if y'all have done the homework, there's not much water, sewer, power, or anything near both the fields that y'all are looking at. The age group you covered, most of them are over 14 years old, which is a concern to us here. Big concern about is hurricane evacuation. You've talked about your evacuation protocol quite a bit. During hurricane season and summer season, we could have as many as 100,000 people down on the island. More than 100,000, according to Orange Beach. She's sitting here looking at me. And we are trying to get those people out of harm's way, along with our 205,000 residents here in the county. And to have y'all trying to be integrated into that operation is going to be very challenging for us. We really don't have a north-south corridor that it can accommodate what we could have in a highly populated weekend at the beaches already. A lot of concerns about communication issues, healthcare issues, and then I guess my primary question is, if it sounds more like an intern camp than anything else, you're keeping them on site, you're housing and schooling them. What is the definition of temporary, and what is the end game? I mean, what is the objective of what we're trying to achieve by housing these folks here? Do they turn 18 and we open the gate and let them out into the population? Are we trying to get them sent back home? What is the plan? And I guess let me stop there with that and get some comments from you, if I may.
Absolutely, Commissioner. I wrote down your questions, so hopefully I'll go through and hopefully I address them all. Starting, we'll go backwards. The most recent question is what happens to these children when they turn 18? And what the end goal is of a temporary shelter. So our temporary, we have the responsibility to care for these children after they come across the border and are apprehended by, or they turn themselves into Border Patrol. Under U.S. law, the children have a different status than just other adults, illegal folks who cross illegally. So they have the right to go in front of an immigration judge and make a case for why they want to stay in the U.S. And because of that, the Department of Health and Human Services, when the children are in our care, our responsibility is to identify a sponsor in the U.S. for the children to live with after they leave our care. Most of the children who came in 2015 were reunited with a parent who was already living in the U.S. Others were reunited with a close family member or a family friend. So when they leave our care, they go live with someone in the U.S. while they're awaiting immigration proceedings. The average time in our care in 2015 was about 30 days. So from the time the child comes into our care to the time we release the child to the sponsor is about 30 days. The question about 18-year-olds, the day a child turns 18, we turn them back over to Border Patrol. We only have responsibility for the children under age 18, and so the day they turn 18, they fall into a different category of folks who cross the border, and so they're no longer cared for in our operation. And this is and one of the questions I can anticipate coming is, how do you know how old they are? One of the components of the release process of releasing a child to a sponsor is documentation of how old the child is, birth certificate, the potential sponsor, the parent's identification, proof of residency, background checks on the parents. And if we have questions about documentation or a child doesn't have documentation, then we have a pretty rigorous process that we fine-tuned over time to determine age so that we know how old the child, someone is who comes into our care. So that's the end goal of these children are released to live with the sponsor while they're awaiting immigration proceedings. The purpose of the temporary shelter, it truly is a temporary, semi-permanent structure. Temporary shelter would be just to give enough beds availability so that children don't back up at the border, so that we don't impact the Border Patrol's ability to do their Homeland Security mission. So this is, temporary shelters is not the first, second, or third option for the Office of Refugee and Resettlement. This is really we would only go into temporary structures if we have children and we don't have anywhere else to put them. So your other question about health care, we do bring in our own infrastructure, including medical personnel, on site 24 hours a day to care for the children. And then we also have a medical team here at the headquarters office, including epidemiologists and pediatricians, to provide oversight over the care that children receive on the site. On the communication issues, one of the lessons that we learned in 2014 as we were scrambling to find additional bed space was the notification process of local communities so that this could be more informative, so that we didn't just show up in someone's backyard one day and set up a temporary facility. So as we have done across the country, as we've gone to assess facilities and properties, we've done a notification ahead of time, which is a call that the commissioners and elected officials received probably 10 days ago to say that we'd be coming in to take a look at Baldwin County outlying airfields. So that's something that we remain committed to, and just as we're doing this type of communication. We will obviously, any temporary shelter we set up, we bring in communications personnel, public information officer, federal branch managers to make sure that questions are being answered about any temporary shelter, just as we are. We did at home in New Mexico, and as we currently have open at Homestead in Florida. The hurricane planning, one of the things that the assessment team took a look at was exactly the issue you identified, the evacuation corridor route, what potential, what this looks like for a time when an evacuation was needed, and how our operation could integrate into that, or what challenges that could pose. So that was one of the things the assessment team took a look at. The age group that we bring into temporary shelters, they are teenagers. We do serve children 0 to 17, and the kids who are under age 1 are often infants who are brought across the border by 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old teenage mothers. And because the teenage mom is under the age 18, both the mom and the child come into our care. We don't put infants or toddlers or tender-aged children in temporary facilities. We have specialized facilities to care for those types of children. So we bring children in who are a little bit older. And then on the security question, we do have secure perimeters. We do have 24-hour surveillance and significant security presence in temporary facilities. And then the question about, these children made it all the way here, what makes us think that they will stay with us? Once the children reach our care, we're the last step between them reaching the place they want to go. And it's a facilitated process where as soon as they come into our care, they get to call the person that they've left in their home country. They get to call the person they're trying to reunite with in the U.S. So while they have made this long journey and have come to the United States and crossed illegally, our experience with this population is that they stay with us and appreciate the care we provide them because they know that they're about to be reunited with their family member. But that's not the case for all children. Many of you in the room likely have teenagers who aren't always the easiest to deal with. We have different types of shelters in our shelter network to accommodate for children who aren't easy to deal with. So we have something called the staff secure shelter, where we have additional on-site personnel to provide additional security. And then we also have secure shelters, which are detention facilities for children who can't be in the general population because they're a risk to themselves or to others. So we do take the security of the general population of the children we're serving, as well as every community we're in, very seriously. And the reporting requirements for running our shelter is we have enhanced oversight over temporary shelters to ensure that any type of issue is immediately flagged, and if a child should not be in temporary shelter, we will relocate them immediately to a more appropriate setting. So Commissioner Dorsey, I hope I addressed all of your questions.
Well, we have a couple other people in the room, if you don't mind. Commissioner Elliott.
Go ahead.
Sure, this is Commissioner Chris Elliott. I'm particularly focused, now you've gone through some of these questions, and while some of your answers are general in nature and you haven't gone into specifics about meeting infrastructure requirements, I would assume that you are at the very least going to realize that there are significant costs associated with going into a place where there's absolutely no water, sewer, very little power, and a very little road, and absolutely no structure to begin with. So I'm sure that'll work into your methodology when you're doing your feasibility for these two sites. But I wanted to drill down specifically on two issues, and I'll ask the sheriff to jump in here too if he's interested. But my primary concern is these temporary standard shelters, which you keep talking about, and their ability to withstand the winds that we have here in South Alabama, not only in tropical events, but in other events. I'm aware that the federal government does not have to comply with local building codes, but I will let you know that Baldwin County in particular has adopted very stringent building codes, so that our structures and even our temporary structures, to include mobile homes and modular homes, can withstand the often significant wind loads that we have in South Baldwin County during a tropical event, and again, sometimes just during straight line winds and an afternoon thunderstorm. I would be very concerned about 2,000 kids in either of these outlying landing fields in structures that are fundamentally unsound and that differ significantly from the the building codes that we have here that we know we do to keep our people safe. That would be a significant issue for us. I would want to make sure that anything that y'all put there, that it was designed and the design specs at minimum met our wind load requirements. And we certainly can't require that, but I think that's a minimum goal. If your goal is to actually make sure that you protect these kids, is to make sure that your temporary structures meet our requirements for wind load. The second is about the evacuation protocol. You've talked about there being an evacuation protocol. You've talked about there being specific, or you haven't gotten into the specific methodology of that protocol. This is something that, again, is a huge issue for us here in Baldwin County, being right close to the Gulf of Mexico. And your Wolffield site in particular is miles, as in 2, from the water. So you are talking about being very, very close to Perdido Bay and to the Gulf of Mexico. To me, that is problematic both in elevation and distance from the water. What exactly is your evacuation protocol? What exactly is your methodology for risk assessment when it comes to, for instance, elevation and then again proximity to the coast? And how are you going to deal with evacuating 2,000 children and putting them on, again, our already congested arteries during a hurricane, a tropical event, or an evacuation of any kind? And we'd ask prior to you moving in that you have if you were to do so, have an in-depth discussion with our EMA director, Reggie Chitwood, who's on this call, about ways to integrate into our evacuation plan and make sure that we have planned for any problems that may cause, because I can assure you that it will cause issues for us.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Elliott. On the question on infrastructure, that is looking at the site to see what is there and what we would need to bring in was what the assessment team took a look at last week to identify how much water would need to be hauled in, how much gray water would need to be hauled out, types of generation, things like that. Those were components of the assessment and they are being reported back that we're taking into consideration for whether or not this site is feasible for us. Also taking a look at weather patterns, location, sea level, distance to ocean. Those are also things that are being assessed in the environmental scan that the team is doing to see if those components would meet our needs. Our goal is, our mission and our responsibility is to care for these children, and we don't want to do anything that would put them in harm's way or set up an infrastructure that would not withstand wind. So things like that you brought up, the wind gusts and the wind load requirements, are things that we think about as we assess different sites as well. I don't have a specific answer on your question about the evacuation protocol, other than it varies for us based on the location. And so if we were to use a site that was close 2 miles from the ocean, or we would have enhanced evacuation protocols that would be designed in partnership with Mr. Chipwood and the local officials who have expertise in the area, and to figure out how to integrate those plans with what you have already established for the county but we would likely have, and this is one of the cost components that we will also think about, have buses that we would rent from some non-hurricane zone to have ready to evacuate on standby if we needed to. So I don't have any more specifics on the evacuation planning other than if this is something that we decide we want to pursue more, we can have continued conversations with the county.
And Commissioner, we do have a team of emergency management experts led by Commander Jonathan White, and who works closely with Andrea, and we would certainly put him and his team in touch with you all if there was a decision to proceed forward. And with respect to Homestead, we had several conversations with the Miami-Dade County Emergency Management Office about evacuation plans and how that would work, and I know they'd have offline conversations in even more detail about that. So that's something we do take very seriously.
Commissioner Gruber?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Gruber. Some of, a lot of the residents out there, they have got a lot of concerns, a lot of more security, what to expect. And I know that the Wolf Field, and I think also the Silver Hill Field, the only thing they have on the boundaries are a 4-foot page fence, and it's not a chain link, it's not none of this stuff, it's just plain thing. And you look at the area that those fields cover, several hundreds of acres, and some areas, you can get off way in the corner, somebody would never see them, and security is a big topic. What I've been hearing from a lot of the residents, because they're afraid. You're bringing people in that they don't know nothing about, and they've lived a life of safety. They feel like they're comfortable, and now all of a sudden they're getting 2,000 kids dumped on them, and anything can happen like that. It's just we just don't know what all y'all's plans are, and hopefully, you can come up with something and tell us, what you're all going to do, and give us a time to understand what's going on. It's just, when I talked to you the other day, I know you mentioned the schools and everything else, and the thing is, and to me, it sounds like it's going to be a compound in nature, and I still have a lot of stuff with our security, because our sheriff's department cannot handle all that type of work in that area, especially both fields. I'm trying to keep help with security. I know you all got stuff, but it's still going to be a big overload for them, having calls, from residents and everything else. So hopefully that you can make sure that security is your number one issue.
Absolutely, Commissioner Gerber, appreciate that. And in some of our other temporary facilities, we hire additional security officers for the site itself, and often that is in partnership with the county sheriff's office for off-duty law enforcement officers who want to spend time on our facility. But in making sure that the facility is secure, both for the children and for the community, is one of our top concerns before we establish a temporary facility.
Commissioner Burke?
The first question I have is Department of Health and Human Services contacted Governor Bentley, and are you working through his office in any way? Second question is, when did Department of Health and Human Services begin this program? Has it always been since, what year or when did you begin the program? And what's the annual budget for running a program like this? And is it by congressional act and statute, or is it a presidential order?
Thank you very much, Commissioner. The sheltering of unaccompanied children was originally an INS, Immigration Naturalization Service, which now has been folded into the Department of Homeland Security. A lot of the protocols and guidelines that we are required to follow happened as a result of the Florida settlement of the mid-90s between a class action lawsuit against the U.S. government for how unaccompanied children were being cared for in INS. And in the late 90s, INS started setting up shelters that were child-friendly, that were group homes, facilities where the children, it wasn't family detention, it was child-specific. The program itself came to the Department of Health and Human Services in 2003 after the Homeland Security Act. And so the program has been here ever since. And over the last few years, we've seen a significant increase in the number of children we serve. And then the other law that governs how we care for these children is the Trafficking Victims Reauthorization Protection Act of 2008. So the work we do is by statute. In 2014, when we had a significant increase in children coming across the border, the president did have a presidential order related to the children, but that was because of the influx at the time. The rest of the program is run under statute and by the direction from the Florida settlement.
What about the governor? Are you working with the governor?
Yes, sir, Commissioner. This is Jim Mason. And we have worked with Governor Bentley's office. We reached out to his office the day that we notified the commissioners of our intention of conducting an assessment, and then we had a follow-up conference call with the governor's team to kind of walk them through this, answer their questions. So yes, we have been in close touch with Governor Bentley's office, and we will continue to be in touch with the governor's office as well as you all with each step of this process. I mean, we want to be transparent. We want to be able to answer questions that come up, allay concerns. I mean, we see this very much as a partnership with both the state and the local community.
Who heads up the governor's team, and do you know any of the people that on that team?
Yes, sir. I don't have the names with me. I know we worked with Yasami August, and then I know the governor's, again, I'm sorry I don't have my notes in front of me, the governor's deputy chief of staff was on, their deputy counsel was on, they were, I think one of the governor's health policy advisors was on, so these were folks in his immediate office.
Thank you.
Yes,
Y'all, I've got a few more questions that are coming from leaders around the room. I guess the biggest one that's kind of flying around right now, what is the timeline that y'all are working on today? I mean, y'all have done a site visit, we're having this call. What is your timeline for making decisions? What is that process? And if you green light one of these projects, what would the timeline from that look like, from construction infrastructure to first child in, last child out kind of information?
Thank you for that question. The assessment team went in last week and they're putting together their report for HHS this week. We want to have a decision soon so that if we don't proceed, we'll know that, or if we need additional information ahead of making a decision, we can know that as well. So hopefully soon, but the numbers fluctuate so significantly in the number of referrals we have of children, so that we're constantly taking into account how many children we're receiving to figure out what our bed capacity needs to be later this summer. And then obviously right now we have the 800-bed shelter open. In addition to our other beds, we have the 800-bed shelter open at Homestead. We have the one that's empty, but we can utilize it again at home and Air Force Base. So we also have additional space that we have available prior to needing to go down the route of semi-permanent structures. But then if we do need to use semi-permanent structures and make a decision, we would be in touch with the county and with officials to make those plans. The question on the last one is last kid out. The goal would not to be, our intent on semi-permanent structures is to use them not for an extended period of time. But what that time looks like, I don't know, because it depends on the number of children who come across the border and the availability of our shelter network beds.
What kind of studies do you do with, this is Commissioner Dorsey again, what kind of studies do you do with regards to economic impact? Certainly concerns for reduced property values in our area. We've struggled from the 2008 crash and trying to make our way back. from a property value standpoint? And then what kind of environmental impact studies do you also do in conjunction with these projects?
I don't know the answer to that question. Commissioner, we'll have to get back to you.
Okay.
And Commissioner, let me just point out too, again though, this is a temporary situation, right? So this is not something we would be there for years or even a year or even several months. It just really is to handle, if we needed to handle a surge in the number of children coming across the border. So this is not a long-term proposition by any stretch.
Okay. Has Fort Whiting notified y'all? We've been in negotiations for over a year with regards to Barronfield, which is currently a naval operation base, which would not be in consideration for y'all, but also Silver Hill, with regard to being a staging area for us to manage hurricane events with regards to construction crews, ice, water distribution, food distribution, those kind of things. And how do you see that as an impact towards the facility that y'all are proposing at Silver Hill?
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'm sorry, just to put a finer point on that. This is where we're staging our Red Cross, our power company responders that are coming to restore power to the area. And as the chairman said, ice, water, food distribution, etc. That the intention was, in the event of a tropical event, this is where we would be staging those assets. And your presence there would really force us to rethink that entire section of our emergency response plan, and we wanted to make sure that you were aware of that if you weren't already. So, excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
You're good.
Thank you very much. That was the staging, the conversations about staging. That was something that the Whiting field leadership let our assessment team know about when they were there on Thursday. So we do know that now, and it's something, as we look at all of the options we have available, that's something obviously we're taking into consideration as well.
Ken, you have anything? David?
Yes. Mr. Chairman, my name is David Conner, I'm the county attorney. David Conner, the county attorney, can you hear me?
We can.
All right, I have a couple of questions for you. One, just looking at the website that you have, it states that the Office of Refugee Resettlement helps new populations maximize their potential in the United States by linking them to critical resources that assist them in becoming integrated members of American society. Now,
And sir, that's refugees. That's not unaccompanied children.
okay, unaccompanied children, then what's the difference in your treatment of them?
Yep. So unaccompanied children, under U.S. law, are a separate category because unaccompanied children cross the U.S.-Mexico border without a guardian. But cross illegally without a guardian, they are designated by law as unaccompanied alien children with the right to go in front of an immigration judge prior to make a case on why they want to stay in the United States. Refugees is entirely, and the other type of populations we serve, is a separate process that starts with the State Department, and applications for refugee status come to the State Department, and then the State Department does an assessment of the application as well as a thorough background check and investigation of a potential applicant. That process can take up to 2 years. If the person is designated, deemed some of the State Department would like to resettle in the United States, then that resettlement process begins, and an individual person, or usually a family group, is assigned a place in the United States. Then they arrive at an airport individually. They're greeted by a resettlement agency. They're taken to a house, and the places where refugees go is a state and federal partnership that's done each year in collaboration with the Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration, where each state, in partnership with the resettlement agencies, makes a determination of how many refugees will come to each state and the services that are provided. The Office of Refugee Resettlement Assistance happens at the very, very tail end of that, after a refugee or a refugee family has already arrived in the U.S. and is in an apartment. Then we step in to provide funding for cash and medical assistance, training opportunities, English language classes, things like that. So it's a very separate process that we run as well.
Okay, and I understand that what you'll be housing if it's deemed necessary at this temporary shelter, would be the unaccompanied children as a result of illegal immigration. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. With that said, it's a 30-day program that you list. And to some of the questions that Commissioner Dorsey asked and Commissioner Elliott asked and others, you stated that the federal government would provide all the funding related to the services being provided while they're at the shelter. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then you also stated that the plan was to identify them and place them with a family or someone else after that 30-day period of time. Is that correct?
The average child stays with us is 30 days. The process through which we identify a sponsor for someone for the child to live with varies across different types of children. Kids who are going to their parents, that's usually faster, but the average is 30 days.
All right. Under the refugee resettlement program, clearly the ultimate funding at some point in time ends up with a matching program between the federal government and the states. Is that true of the unaccompanied children? For example, if these children are released to parents or agencies or groups in Baldwin County, the state of Alabama, then does either the county or the state of Alabama have to meet matching fund requirements for their care, medical school, etc.?
No, sir.
Okay. And so
And the vast majority of these children would probably not be in Alabama, right? It's where their sponsor lives. So their sponsors could be in Texas, they could be in New York, California. It's just, the shelter is just where we place the children until we can find the sponsor to reunite them.
It's got to be a huge dollar amount.
Oh, I'm sorry. Somebody asked previously what the funding was, and I missed out on my notes when I was going through. $950 million was appropriated for unaccompanied children last year, or for this fiscal year.
Wow. Awesome, got anything?
This is Sheriff Mack. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
In the very beginning, you broke down a little bit of the demographics of the children you service, and I think it was around 45% Guatemalan, 17% Honduran, 29% El Salvador. That's 91%. Do you have any idea what makes up that remaining 9%?
Yes, sir. Most of those children are from Mexico.
Okay. Of the children you've dealt with in the past, I know you said that one of the first things you do is you try to go towards documentation. What is your data on that? How many are you actually able to get a verified documentation on as to their citizenship and their next of kin, and do you have any access to any acts of juvenile delinquency that may have been committed in their country of origin?
Yeah, it's a good question, sir. We don't release the children until we have verification, documentation from the sponsor and the child. So if a child comes with nothing and we can't track down documentation about them, that child will stay in our care a significantly longer period of time until we can track documentation down. We have standing agreements with the embassies and the consulates for the areas where our shelters are located. So if the child doesn't come with proper documentation, we work with them. And then we also, the relationship with the consulate also helps to identify if there is some sort of security risk with a child who's coming to our care.
Okay. If while the child is located on the temporary facility, this is my last couple questions, all relates to this. While the child is on there, and thank you said that there are those times in which teenagers are unmanageable. Totally agree with that. That let's say they commit a criminal act on another child or on a security guard while they're there. Do you refer that to local authorities, or what's your procedure and protocol for handling that?
We do indeed, sir. Our reporting requirements are incredibly strict for all of our shelters for a variety of legal reasons and the Prison Rape Elimination Act. If there's any type of aggression or any type of issue, we do report it to local police.
Okay, so that's my other. I'm on the. Thank you for that answer. So you do follow the PREA guidelines as set forth by the federal government. Is that correct?
We do, sir.
So if a child there discloses any type of having been a sexual or physical abuse, then that would also be reported to our local authorities, and that would come under us to handle that situation as well.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Oh, one last question on security. I think I was clear on this. On the security that you do, am I understanding that you're hiring basically a private security firm to handle your security, or do you have a law enforcement arm under your agency?
We hire security firms to provide additional security for our shelters, and often that is then in partnership with local law enforcement agencies, the sheriff's office, county police offices, organizations like that.
And under your protocol and guidelines, do you prefer or allow armed security, or do you have protocol that mandates it's, like, for instance, inside the fence or whatever? Is that unarmed? What's your protocol for that?
You know, sir, I don't know the answer to that. I was at a temporary shelter in Texas in December, and I'm fairly confident the sheriff was armed that whole time. He came in and out every day to check on our facility, but I don't know what our standards are.
And my last question is, if this moves forward and seems that it may come to our county, would you allow a site visit by us at an existing temporary facility to see actually how it's run and how it actually operates?
Yes, sir, we can accommodate that.
Thank you.
And then I know we're coming close to the end of our hour, Commissioners. I mean, if there are any, obviously we can take another question or two, but if you have additional questions after this call, or members of the public who are there that did not get a chance to ask their questions, let me give you an email address that we monitor regularly, and that is hhsiea@hhs.gov. Again, that's hhsiea@hhs.gov. And we can take additional questions and certainly follow up.
I'll go ahead and tell you, you have mail. We have a couple of last quick questions, Chris.
To see.
Commissioner Elliott?
This is Commissioner Chris Elliott, and I wanted to make a comment rather than just a general question. And first of all, you had described this as a partnership to start with, and I don't want to be rude, and us Southerners pride ourselves on being welcoming and hospitable. But I want to be clear about this, and I apologize if this seems rude, but I want to go ahead and make sure that I state for the record, and any of the commissioners that are in this room, and Sheriff, you as well, if you object, then please note it at this time. You're not welcome. We're not interested in having these facilities here. We don't think that the infrastructure is there to support them. We think you are going to screw up our evacuation plans and our evacuation protocols, and we'd rather you find another place. And again, I'm not trying to be rude, but I wanted to make sure that we let you know what the feeling in this room is and what the feeling in the auditorium is of the 250 people that came out this morning. I understand that you have a job to do, but we think these sites are wholly unsuited for what you propose them for.
And I'll go a step farther. I've been a commissioner for 6 years. I have not had a single issue, and we've had some hot ones around here that's generated as much activity as this with regard to the temporary shelters at these outlying fields. We are asking a lot of questions because we want to know. There really are not any answers that you can provide that are going to make us feel comfortable about what you're doing to our community. We, 205,000, stand firm against not wanting this located in our county. And I guess I'll ask directly, because if you don't ask, you'll never get the answer. What can we do to be removed from consideration for these two areas in its entirety?
Well, we certainly appreciate the feedback we've heard on today's call, and we will take that into consideration as we make our final decision.
When will we know that final decision? This is Frank Burt.
Sir, we don't have a timeline. We're hoping to make it quickly.
Whenever you want to, then.
Well, we would certainly appreciate keeping us informed every step of the process. I'm certain that you'll get a lot of questions along the way from the public as well as from leaders in our community. And I do want to say, we appreciate your time. We appreciate y'all being on this call and listening to our concerns. And we don't want to leave the call thinking that we are ungrateful for your time today. We know y'all have plenty of fish to fry, but we appreciate you listening to the concerns that Baldwin County residents have with regard to these projects being considered.
Yes, sir, thank you. And we certainly appreciate hearing your views and concerns and those of your communities. And again, we continue to invite people to continue following up with us, and we'll certainly follow up with you every step of this process.
Thank y'all very much. I'm sure we'll be in touch soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, we are still officially in a meeting. If I may, I'm going to go ahead and call a 30-minute recess, let everybody clear out. We'll go into the auditorium and say hello and do all that kind of stuff. Appreciate everybody's participation. Anything else? All right, we will call a 30-minute recess at 10:02. Thank you.